Hi there, I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. Here at ISMG Studio, where the topic is securing the enterprise browser. Privileged to welcome to our studio, John Wrobel, Chief Revenue Officer with Menlo Security. John, thanks so much for taking time to speak with me.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
So I want to talk about the need for the secure enterprise browser in 2024 and how it differs from the standard browsers that organizations and individuals are used to.
Sure, absolutely. Good way to introduce Menlo's technology and what we do. So if you think of what the user does, myself, yourself, day to day, everything we do is within the browser. We like to think of it as the new operating system. It's millions of lines of code. It's as complex as an operating system. It's where users spend their time. They're doing several different activities, checking email, downloading files, going to the public internet, and more, we consume applications via the browser. Subsequently, it's very important that we protect it with the same level of controls and the same level of scrutiny that we would with an operating system. At Menlo, that's the core of what we do. Every user's interaction within the browser, we protect. Whether it's clicking an email link, whether it's downloading a file, whether it's going to the public internet where you're susceptible to malware and different forms of tactics that can come via the web, we protect you, as well as the applications from vulnerabilities that can happen via the browser.
So talk about this more. One, how are the browsers vulnerable? And two, more important even, how are they being targeted now?
Yeah, so a lot of different tactics are happening there. And so because users are spending the lion's share of their time within the browser doing the various things I mentioned, the threat adversary has come up with a variety of different tactics. If you look at Chrome and Edge and the different browsers out there, they're susceptible to what's called CVEs, common vulnerabilities that are out there within the industry. The adversary has figured out how to exploit it. And with Menlo, we figured out how to make that be a non-issue for the users within their day-to-day activities.
So talk about what the companies such as Google and Microsoft are doing to contribute to the secure enterprise browser market.
Yeah, so Google's doing a lot with Chrome. We work directly with them. They've developed a derivative of Chrome called Chrome Premium Enterprise that's a lot to do with endpoint controls, enabling policy as to where users are going within the web or to different applications, some privacy controls and some other things along those lines. And similar with Microsoft, they've developed Edge for Business is what they're calling it. Similar controls between what the user does within their personal profile versus their business profile and allowing access to applications and other things within that domain. With Menlo, we take that a little step further with what we do with our virtual cloud browser, where we don't let data to hit the endpoint. So think of the adversary with HTML and JavaScript. We do all that for you so it doesn't come down to the endpoint and prevent any malware or ransomware coming through to the endpoint.
John, would you talk a little bit more about Menlo Security's approach and how is it unique in the marketplace?
Yeah, great question. So a couple different areas come to mind immediately. The first thing is we at Menlo believe that we can turn your existing browser into an enterprise browser. So there tends to be an affinity users have, whether it's to Chrome, Safari, Edge, Firefox. We don't force you to replace your browser, which a lot of other vendors in the market are doing. They run into a big headwind where all of a sudden you're going to take away kind of what a user has been accustomed to using and comfortable with. Very personal, absolutely. And it's something that they have an affinity towards. So that's a roadblock for their adoption and something we hear time and time again in the industry. So at Menlo, we're able to turn your existing browser, whatever you have an affinity to, into an enterprise browser. And as I mentioned, what we do with our virtual cloud browser in the cloud, we actually render all the active content within our service and then mirror that back to the end user without any degradation in user experience, ensuring that nothing bad can come through the browser in any form.
Now, when security leaders sit down and start putting together their priorities, secure browser doesn't always end up at the top of the list. How are you finding individuals driving budget for this?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's becoming more and more thematic in the market. It's certainly topical right now. We've started to see a lot more interest in browser-based attacks. And as the market unfolds, we've seen attacks as simple as when users hover over banner ads, all of a sudden a JavaScript gets executed and all of a sudden there's a malware event that can compromise their endpoint. So it's becoming more and more thematic as the adversary figures out how to exploit the vulnerabilities within the browsers today. Securing the perimeter is something we actively do before it even gets to the user's network, where you're more in a detection mode. Menlo, we're in the full prevention mode for any activity or user behavior within the browser. Another element we do is if a user were to click on a link in an email, we're going to open a web session. And since we're rendering that web session in our service, we can look at all the attributes of that website for authenticity. Where's it hosted? Is the logo authentic? Are there input credential fields? And we'll assess a risk score. So you might click on an Office 365 login page. It looks and feels just like any Office 365 login, but it isn't. Menlo will detect that and put it in read-only mode to prevent the users from having any credential harvesting.
Excellent. Great business case.
Yeah, thank you.
What are questions that organizations need to be asking before they go out and choose their secure enterprise browser?
Yeah, I think first of all, what approach do they want, right? So as you look at kind of some of what the competitors are doing with a full replacement, that tends to be a big barrier to adoption. Yep. With Menlo, you're up and running. It's a seamless deployment. And so they need to ask themselves what approach they want to take from an endpoint. Obviously, we had a recent event with some endpoint controls where if you get too heavy on your endpoint, you're susceptible to certain things. Yeah. So by not taking a big presence on the endpoint, remaining agnostic using your current browser, it's a big differentiation that needs to be considered. Also, the security posture and the outcomes you're really working towards. So again, with Menlo, because we're not allowing any data to hit the endpoint, be it files, be it active internet content, or as you access applications, nothing can get through to compromise the application if the endpoint's compromised. Those are the things you need to think about to ensure that you are getting the outcomes you want from your security controls.
Very well said. John, I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, the topic has been securing the enterprise browser. You just heard from John Wrobel. He is the Chief Revenue Officer with Menlo Security. For Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thank you for your time and attention.